What would happen if gravity, the very force that keeps our feet on the ground and our planets in orbit, suddenly decided to take a 10-second coffee break? It's one of those classic thought experiments, a wild and seemingly impossible scenario. But the consequences, my friends, are far more chaotic and devastating than you can possibly imagine. Let's not mince words here. Those 10 seconds would be the strangest and quite possibly the last. Seconds of many, many lives. Picture this. You're sitting in a coffee shop, maybe sipping a latte, scrolling through your phone. The world is normal, and then, at exactly 12 o'clock, it happens. Gravity vanishes. The first thing you'd notice is the feeling, or rather, the lack thereof. The weightlessness would be immediate. Your phone, your coffee cup, the table you're at, they would all float away from you. You too would float gently out of your chair. For those first few moments, it might feel exhilarating, a bizarre, surreal sort of magic trick. But that brief moment of wonder would quickly dissolve into sheer terror. The simple act of exhaling would send you drifting. The coffee shop's customers, the chairs, the sugar packets, they would all become a slow-motion storm of floating debris, a silent ballet of utter confusion. But the real trouble starts almost instantly. Everything not physically anchored to the Earth, and I mean everything, would begin to drift away from the planet's surface. Think of all the airplanes currently in the sky. They would stop falling and just float in place, their passengers suddenly feeling like they're in a zero-G flight simulator, but without any warning or safety protocols. Your car on the freeway? It would rise off the ground, bumping into other cars as they all ascended in a terrifying metal cloud. Buildings and houses, with their foundations still anchored, would lose their unanchored contents. Everything inside your home, your furniture, your TVs, your kitchen appliances, would fly upwards and out of any open windows or doors. Imagine the absolute chaos as entire cities become giant, open-air boxes, spewing their contents into the atmosphere. As the seconds tick by, the situation escalates from a bizarre spectacle to a full-blown catastrophe. The atmosphere, not tethered by gravity, would begin to expand rapidly. It would rush outwards, causing a sudden and severe drop in air pressure. The air in your lungs would expand, pushing its way out. You would feel an intense crushing sensation as the pressure difference takes hold and the very air you breathe starts to become dangerously thin. For anyone unlucky enough to be outside, the consequences would be even more immediate and terrifying. The air would be sucked away, and you'd be exposed to the near vacuum of space. Lakes, rivers, and oceans would not float away in one giant blob. Instead, they would vaporize, boiling from the lack of pressure. The resulting steam and water vapor would then freeze instantly in the upper atmosphere. The entire world's weather system would be thrown into unimaginable turmoil. Then, at 12:00:10, gravity snaps back on. And this is where the real horror begins. Everything that has been floating, everything that has been rising, would now fall back to Earth. But it wouldn't be a gentle descent. These objects, having traveled for 10 seconds, would have a significant amount of speed, and that speed would be converted into catastrophic impact. Everything from your latte cup to a semi-truck would slam into the ground with the force of a high-speed collision. People would fall from wherever they had risen, turning the landscape into a brutal, unforgiving target. Anyone who had been indoors and floated up to the ceiling would be slammed back down. Anyone who had been outside would fall from a height of dozens, if not hundreds of meters, hitting the ground at unimaginable speeds. The aftermath would be a scene of total and complete devastation. Buildings would be crushed by the sheer weight and force of everything falling on them, not just the contents of their own rooms, but also the debris from neighboring buildings, cars from the freeway, and countless other objects that had been floating around. The ground itself would be scarred by the impacts of millions of objects. The world would be littered with the wreckage of our civilization, a grim testament to the silent, invisible force we take for granted every single day. The planet would be a giant, pockmarked junkyard. The air would be thick with dust and debris, obscuring the sky. It would be a world utterly unrecognizable. So, the next time you feel frustrated with a long commute or a slow elevator, just remember what's holding you to the ground. Gravity. It's a real lifesaver, and we should all be very, very glad it doesn't take lunch breaks.